Welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Listen in as we discuss all things business, growth and marketing with business owners, thought leaders and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, founder of Roundhouse, the creative agency, Saul Edmonds.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Today I'm speaking with Nathan Wunsch from Property Pursuit around the topic of helping buyers and investors purchase property. Nathan, how are you today?
Hi, Saul. How are you, mate?
Yeah, really good. What's up?
Not too much. Thanks for having me on, mate.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, totally. I think this is going to be a pretty interesting topic today.
Hope so.
It will be. I can tell you right now. But it'll what I'll get you to do, if you wouldn't mind, just before we start sort of into the main part of the conversation, for everybody listening, as you are Nathan from Property Pursuit,
Yes.
to give everyone, I guess, a bit of an outline about the business, its history, the sort of services you provide, and your role within the business as well.
Yeah, sure. I can do that. Obviously, as you said, I'm Nathan Wunsch. I'm from a business called Property Pursuit. We're a buyer's agency, a local buyer's agency based in Brisbane. The business itself has been in operation since 2003. So in terms of buyer's agency, we're probably one of the longest serving, certainly within Brisbane, but even across the country. The segment of the market that we work in is still quite in its infancy when you look at the broad scope of real estate within Australia, and what we do is sort of at that I guess the baby steps of where we're going, but it's grown dramatically in the last sort of 10 years. So we've been around for quite a long time, and was started originally by our director, Megan Hetherington, and she's obviously still involved with the business. And I actually started with Property Pursuit in 2014. So I've been with the company now for 6 years. I'm a partner with the business, and my background was actually in construction, so sort of totally different background. And I guess I sort of landed in the role of a buyer's agent. I honestly hadn't even heard of it. Probably a month before I was like, yep, I could do that job.
Yeah.
And at the time, so my sort of history, I guess, in terms of work history was, I sort of came out of school, did an apprenticeship, and did a number of years just building homes. And then I sort of that evolved into working as a field civil engineer on a large construction project in central Queensland for about 4 years in like a fly in fly out capacity. And so doing that, you get bored at night, watch pay TV in your room, and when that project was coming to an end, I was sort of starting to contemplate what I was going to do next, because I'd made the call that I wouldn't continue doing fly in fly out work. And I saw a program about buyer's agency in England, actually, at the time. I thought, gee, that's pretty cool. I could do that. And so I searched online on Seek, and there was an opportunity. And I thought, yep, I'll jump at that. I can do that. And I now know that those opportunities literally don't ever come up. It was just pure, it was almost meant to be. That timing was ridiculous. That I was considering it and looking at it at the time. And for years I'd had a lot of sort of passion and great interest in property. Obviously, coming from a construction background, I've been involved in and around houses for a long time leading up to that. And I'd done some buying and selling of my own, and some renovations and those sorts of things. And it was something that certainly in the last couple of years of when we were on that project, me and a number of other people on that site were talking about. That was constantly the chatter on site. Was about that. So it sort of made sense to go down that path. And when I started to look at what I would do after I finished that project, obviously I was considering, maybe I'd just go and do what I always did. But I increasingly gave property attention. And the thing that I found difficult is I didn't think that selling agents, that being a selling agent was really right for me. It just didn't seem like the right fit for me. But the buyer's agency side of the industry really spoke to me. It's very much about the client, not so much about, say, the product or the sale of the property. And I really love that, that attribute of it, and being able to get in depth with the client and really help them and understand them and try and guide them, and sort of combine two things that I'm really passionate about. One being property, and the other being helping people achieve a goal or something that they really passionately trying to aspire to. So that was sort of how I got involved with the business.
Yeah, it's like I guess. Yeah, on that subject, actually, I find that really interesting too, because you saying of what you did before with building houses and being in that side of the industry, when you say it, in the same conversation as what you're doing now, it makes a lot of sense to me. If you would, like, simply from the point of view of helping people, it's not in the same way, but it's still in the same industry, and there's still that. I guess, am I right in sort of saying that there's there's, I guess, that similar drive, mainly just to help people? And because that was going to be one of my questions, was that, like, it's perfect. I'm sort of segue into that, but you've already then answered it. Really, it's what draws you, or what drew you into doing that with their property purchases anyway. But it sort of seems to be that you already had that in another form, and then that kind of transferred itself into just another, I don't know, you could say housing, I suppose. Like,
yep.
Forgive the pun, but like in a new kind of, a container, like in this new environment, but same industry and for similar reasons. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, Saul. And I guess, it allowed me to bring a couple of other, tools to the, to the role as well. I could look at a property a little bit differently to, say, someone who hadn't had that background. Certainly I think there's a number of clients who have, felt a lot of comfort around that. And especially one of the key parts of the process is obviously, the physical inspection of a property and getting a sense for whether it's a good quality home, and how are the bones, and is there any major issues that we can sort of spot pretty quickly. And, given my background, I can, look at that probably in a little bit more depth than, say, someone who didn't have that. And then the other part being that, when you purchase a home, one of the key things you'll do is do a building and pest inspection, and being able to fully understand the reports that come from that, be able to talk confidently with the inspectors about different aspects of it, definitely allowed me to bring, that, it's something quite important to the table there. Yeah,
that would be, that's once again, like, another thing that I guess you don't really consider then when you're not, an engineer. Nobody really ever thinks in depth about all the 20 little details about what other people do. But when, once again, you say it like that, that would be hugely relevant. But I would imagine too, like, from, say, having been a buyer and a seller in the past, when you've gone to buy something, and the experience you have from, in our experience, that wasn't ever a buyer's agent. It was the agent who was then selling it. But I would imagine, like, someone who's in that role, adding that extra value, even if it seems, when we're talking about it, like something less significant, would probably have been, I'm just sort of putting myself in that context again, and going, that would be amazing, and it would be surprising, I would think, actually, if someone then all of a sudden had, a different level of experience that, you completely, you just assume obviously isn't there, because people have a certain perspective about what they're going to get, I suppose, from that experience, based on either past experience or what friends or family have shared with them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. Like, I think and this is the thing, that when a lot of people go into the process of purchasing a property, number one, a lot of people don't do it that often. So you sort of forget the level of detail and all the little intricacies that you've got to think about and go into.
Yeah.
And you, having someone to really, I guess, point that out and walk you through those things, and one of those being, understanding of, the building and pest situation and understanding the quality of the home and those sorts of things to walk you through, that's pretty damn important. And I think when you go into it, you're sort of going, oh, this is easy. I just got to, look on realestate.com and find a property that looks really good. And then we just, pay the money and happy days. But there's, about 100 different steps in between those things happening to actually make that come together smoothly and not make a mistake. And I think that's where we see ourselves there to, I guess, risk manage that and add some value to the clients from that perspective.
Yeah, and it's for most people, it's going to be the biggest expense they're going to ever have in their lives. So, and I mean, even on that score, it's hugely important, let alone if the property is then worth more, I suppose, or because I mean, for the most part, like, it's still always super important, but to some extent, the level of stress and importance that people place on it tends to increase then with the cost too, and I mean, it's always going to be more than anything else, and it's going to be your new home, maybe forever, and you're going to have to, loan money. I mean, often, to get that. So I mean, it's a huge responsibility. Like, I mean, people, I guess they, I mean, no one who is a part of an industry really understands that, but especially having myself personally good experiences, which I have really, for the most part, I've had good experiences buying and selling with, like, good people. So I suppose that, I don't know whether that's lucky or it's just like how it goes. I don't know. That's just been my experience, but that does, it's been so important, especially depending on your life circumstances at the time too, if and why you're buying or selling. So
and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think, that you sort of hit the nail on the head there, that how, number one, it's probably the most, expensive item that most people purchase in their lifetime. You don't do it very often. And to go hand in hand with the expense of this item that you're about to purchase, in many cases when it's someone's home, it's also one of the most emotional purchases that you'll ever make. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are, I guess, pulling in, sometimes different directions there, and, things that you've got to manage. And for a lot of people, it is, quite stressful. It's very time consuming. I think people, sometimes forget that when, like we said before, when you don't do it that often, you sort of, it's one of those things, you sort of forget how much goes into it. And then,
very much so.
It is quite time consuming. And you sort of talk to people about, I think we looked into this, and it's, the average property purchase takes someone sort of roughly 4 months and about 200 hours, which works out to be about 10 to 12 hours a week of, their time that they're having to put into it across all the various steps that you take to get to that point. And when I guess, we could talk about both our own situations, but when you talk to someone and say, if you had to find 10 to 12 hours in your week to, put a focus on something else, do you think you could really do it properly? Most people would say, I probably couldn't find 2 hours in my week to, add to, something else into what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are so busy these days. So, I think we enjoy that part of it, to be able to take that stress and off the shoulders of a client and really be able to add some genuine value to them. And like you said before, you've had good experiences in terms of, the buying and selling process in the more traditional fashion, which it has been, roughly for, 100 years or so. The person that was involved in those transactions was a selling agent on both sides of the fence. And that was just how it's been done. And two, a vast reality is that most people still see it that way. The vast majority of people are just, if they're going to buy a home, they're going to go to the local selling agent. I guess what we're trying to bring to the table there is just an understanding of, the importance of having someone on your side to, manage the risk and hold, your hand through as a buyer, and be able to really deliver on that, and try and, I guess, reduce the risk, take the stress off, and really hold someone's hand through the whole process.
What would you say are some of the advantages then on the flip side then for real estate agents to actually be working with someone like yourself, like a buyer's agent? And I guess as a part of this, of your reply to this too, maybe just go into explaining a bit more about the difference between a buyer's agent and a real estate agent.
Yep. I guess, so I'll touch on that first. I guess the differences between the two. And one of the things that, people, maybe sort of ask themselves the question of, who's paying who. So, the selling agent, they're being paid by the seller to sell their property, and it's their role to help that seller sell the property, for the best possible price that they can get. That's their role, is to do that. And obviously they're going to help the buyers that they've got interested in those properties as much as they can through that. That's part of that role. But ultimately their role is to sell the property for the best possible price they can get for the seller. It's not necessarily to help the buyer buy it for the best possible price that the buyer can get it, or hold the buyer's hand in terms of looking at, maybe other properties out there that might be more suitable for them. So I guess, the difference is I guess, if you're going down, let's say you've decided to, you're going to buy a home and you're going to buy a home in Paddington. And if you were looking to, go down to the local real estate agency, talk to an agent there and see what they've got to offer, generally they're only really going to talk to you about either what they've got to sell or what their agency's got to sell, not the whole market. And what we can bring to the table, I guess, in a different sense to what the selling agent's doing is, working on behalf of the buyer exclusively for them, and really opening up all avenues and all possible properties that are out there in the marketplace. And that is, both things that are listed online and things that are off market, which is it's a bit of a hot topic at the moment because a lot of properties in this current climate are being sold either, pre-market or off market, as it may be. So being able to access that as well is very helpful. And I guess, overall, it's, as I sort of touched on before, from a selling perspective, obviously the selling agent is there to, hold your hand through that part of the process, where we're there to, I guess, be the representative for the buyer in the transaction and make sure that they, they're represented and protected through that process as well. Now, in saying that, I believe, and I think it's a growing realization too in the industry, that there's, buyers agents and selling agents aren't working against each other. We're working together. So there's a real, and it's been definitely noticed significantly more in the last couple of years, a real cooperation between the two sides of the fence in terms of trying to help each other get the best result for buyers and sellers in the market as much as possible. And in terms of how, I guess, we tend to work in well with selling agents, there's a couple of things there. One, you will find selling agents who do understand that the two various roles. I've often got people that they might have buyers that they've been talking to that are really looking to get into the market to buy something, but they know that they don't have a property or not going to have a property that's going to be suitable for this buyer. So it's an avenue for them to add value to that buyer, to get someone who's going to go out there and then genuinely be able to have the time and that focus to help them find that right property for them. So they're doing a real service to that buyer by putting them in touch with us and letting us help them through that. And I can tell you now, like you and I both know, in terms of a good referral, people always remember that. So you can almost guarantee that
totally.
They'll remember that next time when it comes time to sell, they'll be coming back to that selling agent because they did the right thing by them in terms of that that part of the process. Often we'll work with selling agents where they've got, they might have a client who would sell a property, but they need to buy something first. So we can help them, help that particular client get past that hurdle first in terms of buying the property and finding the right place for them to move into, to then allow them to take that next step along the process of selling the property. And that way it frees up that, that seller to then engage that selling agent to go down the path of that sale where they otherwise wouldn't have if they didn't find that property to buy. So it's a good way to work together to, help that particular client, on both sides of the fence there in terms of, two separate transactions. So there's a number of ways there that, that we can work together to help clients, give them the best outcome that we possibly can in those transactions.
It would be, I would imagine too, it would actually be time saving for agents too, surely, wouldn't it?
Yep. Yeah, I have this conversation with agents a lot where it's not their role isn't to, talk to buyers and go through a buyer, understand a buyer's, brief in depth, go and search the market for them in terms of properties that are out there that might be suitable, take them around to those properties, do the research for them. That's not what they do. But that is exactly what we do. So, from a perspective of, and we touched on this before, the selling agent, yes, if they've got a property that they have listed that's, could be a match for that buyer, they're obviously going to tell them and talk them through that, but they're not going to go to that extent of, going out and researching the market and finding other properties with other agents and, doing all the research to get them to that point and talk them through all those steps. But that's where we can come in and really add that level of service and value to the client. So it's a different role totally. And there's a lot of selling agents get that. And one in particular that we both know, Ben Knight from Harcourts, whenever he gets someone, come across him, saying, mate, can you help me? I'm looking to buy. Can you help me, find something to purchase? He knows that he doesn't have the time and it's not his expertise to do that. And he'll almost, every time refer them onto a buyer's agent to help them through that process.
Yeah. Is the, I guess maybe then another flip side of that too is you never know if a buyer is at some point also going to become a seller at some point too. So the flow-on effect from the other way around too. Like if you got, like we both know, great relationships are at the heart of everything. So the buyer's agent might obviously benefit from them doing their role very, very well. They're very specific set of tasks, and then they at the same time aren't really selling either.
Yep.
And so it goes both ways. I suppose. Have you had much experience with that? Like as in that sort of context with people?
It's certainly, and I guess given the fact that we've been in business for quite a long time, we certainly do get that aspect of where we've assisted clients, to purchase a property in the past, and then they're coming back and saying, yeah, it's time for us to, move on and, potentially sell a property or upgrade or whatever the case might be. So there's absolutely opportunities there where we get to, refer back to selling agents because we don't do that. That's not our role. So when they're saying that, we're like, yep, no dramas. We're exclusively buyer's agents, so we don't sell any properties. But I guess where we can add value to that client at that time is to refer them to, the quality selling agents that we know of, either, in that area or in the market at the time. So, it does go both ways in that respect. And even, when I was talking before about, being able to help selling agents that might have that seller who would sell but needs to buy something, elsewhere. One of the things that, the selling agents like about, being able to, get a buyer's agent involved to assist through that process is the fact that in the vast majority of I guess interactions, we're the buyer's agents, the ones talking to other agents. So it sort of almost insulates that potential seller to come, and we'll always try and have them come back to that selling agent who's referred to us, so that seller's not out there talking to 50 other selling agents potentially taking that sale elsewhere. They can sort of protect that to an extent. So it's just working together to ultimately give that seller or that buyer the best experience and get them the best outcome they can.
It kind of in some ways, like when you're talking about it, whilst the the norm for so very long, forever has been, like you were saying, that the real estate agents have had those two roles. When you're talking about it, it doesn't like it almost sounds like it. Well, actually, it totally sounds like the norm should always have been that you should have a selling agent and a buying agent, even though that hasn't been the norm. That makes a lot more sense to me, that you would, given like just everything we've been talking about, but also the level of importance that everyone places on it, and all the other things that we've already discussed, that it makes a lot more kind of sense. So I guess from that too, who would you say, like in your experience within the industry and the business specifically, who generally mainly uses a buyer's agent? Is there a certain sort of person who's looking for a certain range of property, or is it very, very broad?
It's pretty broad, actually. I mean, if I think of the clients that we have now and have had over the years, it goes from first home buyers looking to first get into the market to experienced investors to, might have clients who are looking to upgrade into, might be the fourth or fifth home they've bought in their lives, and they're, looking to upgrade and take that next step up into a bigger family home, or whatever the case might be. There is a very broad range of people that look to use our services. I think that somewhat speaks to maybe the idea that you were touching on there, that it does make sense that if you can, you would use a buyer's agent when buying and a selling agent when selling, especially given the importance and and the other factors around time and knowledge and those bits and pieces, and the fact that it's a very important and large purchase, to have that experienced and professional representation on both sides of the coin when you're going through that process. So it is quite broad, and I think that that's certainly going to continue to open up as we move forward as well. As more and more people understand what we do and what and the importance of what we bring to the table for buyers, I think that will continue down that path. You tend to see that people that do use our services are people who maybe are open to or have in the past or used to understand the value of paying professionals to do something that they aren't, it isn't there in their, it's not their expertise. They're an expertise in some other field, but when they do other things, they get experts in those fields to do those things for them. So
I guess it's a mindset, isn't it? It's a mindset. I would, I remember a time which I think was probably before I met you. A number of years ago, that I'm pretty sure I didn't even know what a buyer's agent was. That was my first experience actually with knowing. So, having experience with other things real estate related and buying and selling, I still actually hadn't actually come across that. So I'd be sort of interested to know too, like, given that it's still, like, for the most part, it's a newer part of the industry. Like, it's not new anymore, but how do you mainly then get leads or educate people around it? Is it mainly through people's exposure initially to real estate agents, or is it through other means?
Yeah, it's very interesting you raise that, because I can remember the first time that so for people that don't know, we met each other through a B&I business group, and I can distinctly remember going into that room and talking about what we do and the business and stuff and whatnot. And at that time, there was about 50 people in that room, and I think about 49 people had never heard of a buyer's agent. So, and
I was one of them.
Yep, and honestly, that's probably still somewhat of a barrier there too for us, but also an opportunity, I think, because there is a lot of people who, haven't heard of the service we do, or, it's not front of mind for them in terms of, when they're thinking about property. And I think that is born out of, the fact that it wasn't a great, a large part of the industry for such a long time. And, properties, it's, the sort of Aussie dream and the favourite pastime of most Australians. So, everyone sort of thinks they know a little bit about property, and they've got a bit of a, they've got their own views on it and whatnot. So I think those are all sort of barriers to that and challenges, but also opportunities for us. And, we're quite big, and certainly in the last couple of years, we've, really tried to work with different, organisations and avenues to try and spread the word of, what a buyer's agent does and how we add value to clients. And, be that through, associations with, the REIQ has been fantastic with that. They're our industry body in Queensland, and they've been very good in the last couple of years of really giving us a platform to try and do that. And we continue to try to do that with them. REBA, which is our national buyers agency body, we try and, do some stuff through those guys. And certainly we'll often have people who do come to us, looking for a buyer's agent that have come through, that avenue. In terms of, marketing and those sorts of things, I guess a lot of that is, is done through the typical methods that you'll find these days, be it sort of social media or, LinkedIn and those, those avenues to try and, I guess, put the message out there about what we do and what a buyer's agent is. Certainly, I think, now and in the last couple of years, that relationship and that, I guess the sort of crossover knowledge from selling agents has been a big one. That's certainly much bigger than it was, a number of years ago, where selling agents understand the role, understand, the differentiator between the two, and that it's, we're not sort of working against each other. And that's, they've been, good at putting that out there too to the market. And doing things like this, mate, we really appreciate the opportunity, because these are opportunities to put a bit more, information out there to the, just the general public in terms of, what we do and the role that we play. So
absolutely.
You just try and take all those opportunities. As I touched on straight away, the BNI thing, that was, a room of 49 people who didn't really know what the hell we even did. And from that, they know another 100 people that they can talk, it expands on itself. So the more people that you can talk to, the better. And one of the biggest things that I know that there's many, that try and do this, and one of the biggest connections, or I guess avenues that we can add value to other businesses, clients, is sort of through those other, I guess, professionals that are, I guess, associated with the real estate game. So be that, financial advisors, mortgage brokers, accountants, who have clients that, are or will potentially go down the path of purchasing a property at some point, really having them understand the role that we can play to add value to their clients as well. Like going through those avenues has expanded the knowledge and the use of buyer's agents. So it's really just trying to find all those avenues and work it as much as possible to get the word out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can only say too, from my own personal experience, like we said, with that initial exposure, that I had, and I had no understanding of it before. And then even now too, talking about it again, it is, I think, one of the advantages that, then being a buyer's agent, that idea for me has over, say, I mean, not that we're comparing it with anything, but it is one of those ideas that I would imagine, I can only speak from my own personal experience, but it makes a lot of sense. So like a good idea is a good idea. And so even if people don't, even if they have no exposure and they don't have a lot of awareness around it, and there's a bit of education, it's all about, educating people and just sort of informing them. It's still, to me anyway, it was like it's a very obvious, simple you know, it makes
Sense.
it doesn't make a lot of sense that it was never like that. I mean, I put it that way. Like it was always, well, oh, that's kind of weird, because it makes a lot more sense that it would have been like that initially. So, well, who knows? That'll probably be at some future point that will be the norm. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, I'm unable to see into the future of the real estate industry, but I'm sure if I was, like, a lot of people would be wanting my number. They'd be like,
yes, I'd be calling you.
yeah, that's right. If I knew all the answers, which of course I don't.
Well, let's hope you're right, Saul, because that sounds good to me.
Well, no, I mean, I'm only saying that because it just kind of makes sense to me. It's kind of, you see trends with different industries over time, and there's a time when things are either have a monopoly, and then at some point something else comes along and it offers something that makes more sense. And for no other reason than everybody else agrees and recognizes that fact, that then they go, I mean, its own example in its own weird way is like the transition from, say, MySpace, to Facebook, which was like an instantaneous death overnight for poor old sort of MySpace. But I always put that down to the fact that people sort of recognized overnight that there was something that had a far greater focus on sort of content, and their initial, thing of, oh, that's not as visually interesting as MySpace, disappeared overnight. Like, I remember mine did specifically. I was like, oh, that's heaps better. And then you just, see you later, MySpace, and all their shares went down overnight, and they went, into oblivion. And then, Facebook emerged, and I sort of put that down to the, it's not a really accurate kind of comparison, but I think the idea is the same, of people's recognition, sometimes quicker in that instance, sort of, up, down, but sometimes slower. But eventually I think people do realize those things.
Yeah.
And it takes sometimes just more exposure and more people talking about it, which is the natural thing. But just like, say on another question too, if we're talking about investors or buyers, and sometimes those people are the same, they're both, buyers and investors. Have you got any, I guess, numbers or general feeling about, are there more people who are looking to invest, or more people who are really just buying for themselves that use a buyer's agent more often?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. From our experience in our business, it's almost a 50-50. Like there's certainly some, so to look at it from a buyer's agent perspective, there's certainly some buyer's agents who predominantly or only work with investors. So that's their business, is to help investors through that process. But we're a little bit different to that. We help both homeowners and investors. And the reality, and certainly in the last few years, is that we probably work with more homeowners than investors, but it's relatively, split down the middle. It might be sort of a 60-40 split, let's say, and sometimes it's higher and sometimes it's lower, depending on what the market's doing and whatnot. But I think it's a fairly even split across the two. And I think there's, talking before about, the value that can be sort of brought to the table. I think there's sort of similar but also different, value that can be brought to the table, be it for investors or owner occupiers. So it's just really, understanding that and putting that, putting that across to them, and really, helping them as much as we can in the elements that make the most, most difference to them. Sort of talking before, I might be biased, Saul, but I think that you'd be, I certainly wouldn't go down the path of buying now if I wasn't in the industry without a buyer's agent, just given what I know and what's sort of brought to the table for the clients that we work with. And I think when you're talking about the value that's sort of brought to the table, One of the, if you talk about the things that we sort of bring into the table with that, it's, local knowledge for a start. We do work with, clients who are both, local, interstate buyers, people who are expats overseas. But even for clients that have been living in Brisbane for 30 years, they sort of only know what they know. And often they've been in, the same house, or, only been in a couple of houses over that period of time. So being able to bring genuine local knowledge and to the buyers, that connection with the selling agents, and having that, that it plays a big part in a couple of avenues. Number one, it allows us to get access to properties, pre and off market, things that they otherwise, those buyers otherwise may not hear about or know about, that, there might be the perfect property for them. It's out there, but they're just not seeing it, popping up online. Having that access to that is very important. And often our relationship with the agents allows us to have a very different conversation than what, say, a typical buyer in the market might be able to have with that agent that they've met 5 minutes ago. We've a lot of the agents we're talking to on a weekly basis. We've got quite deep relationships with them. We know we can have open and honest conversations with them. So it changes how your communication with them, and then the information that we might be able to sort of get through that conversation as well. So that's quite important for clients. Even down to the research element of it. We sort of talked about that before, where people probably don't have the time to really delve into it as deeply as they should. Even for someone's home, we treat it, still, yes, it's their home, but it's also an investment long term. You still got to take that into consideration. So there's very specific things and quite detailed research that we'll go into for clients, just to make sure that they have all the information that they need to help them make an informed decision on whether it's a property that they go for or not. And one of those key parts of that is understanding the market value of that property. And that's another thing that we can sort of bring to the table there as well. That's important, because the understanding of the market and understanding the market value of the property both helps a client or a buyer to be confident about, if they're going to make an offer, and confident about, the offer they're about to make is the right one, and then they're comfortable with it, and also helps them to determine what they would pay for the property in the first place. So, that sort of, that's sort of part of the process too, having a good understanding of that. And then the general ones around, we talked about before, just generally saving time, and talking about the time that it takes. I mean, because we're looking at properties all the time, you take an investor, for instance, we often get investors who come to us and might say, look, we've got this budget and we're looking for, a quality home within 10 k's of the city. And that's basically the brief. And they're, from Sydney or Melbourne or whatever the case might be, don't really know the market very well. I mean, they would spend hours trying to work out where the right suburbs were to buy, what the right streets in those suburbs were to buy, research. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, like then if you're not going to actually come to the location, which a lot of people can't, that in itself is for such a big investment is, there's certain elements of risk there too, isn't there? Of not sort of knowing. I mean, I can only look back on, whilst we had generally good experiences in buying and selling, I would look back now and knowing how we felt after all those experiences was usually like absolutely hammered, just obviously, like, I wish I had, now, I mean, it's all been done, it's all fine, but if I had known of buyers agents and had known you then, I would have been, if I had known what I know now, I wouldn't have hesitated whatsoever, because it's just so, like, even just outside of everything else, it's just, even when it's a good experience, it's emotionally draining, like massively. It just drains you, and it's so time consuming, and, there's so many reasons. But just in sort of wrapping up, I suppose everything that we've talked about so far, Have you got, Nathan, a quote that you would like to share with everyone that you feel is either relevant or you just really like?
It's funny because I saw this quote the other day and it really hammered home. And the quote is that I'm basically a full-time psychologist who looks at homes every now and then. And that is so true because one of the biggest things, and we talk about this a fair bit within our own office, is that we're really, it's the emotion, even for investors, that, there's obviously not as much emotion involved in that sort of a purchase, but just the understanding of each individual person and each individual client and what is important to them and how they like to be communicated with, and how much emotion they're putting into this particular purchase, and all of those aspects of it to try and manage that from client to client. I think a big part of the job is almost psychology. So,
I can very much relate to that.
I think a lot of people in a variety of different businesses would be in the same boat there, and I think
that's great.
Understanding that and being able to I guess work with that and bring some understanding and some empathy and some patience to the table to really take the time to understand a client, understand their needs, and because at the end of the day, like, that's the most important thing. They're the ones that are they're coming to the table with specific needs and wants and and an outcome that they're really trying to get to. And I think if you can take the time and really try and understand them and work with them as much as possible to understand that, I think it goes a long way to getting the outcome in the end. And sort of
Absolutely.
What I touched on at the start, that one of the things I love about this job is that it's not just about the product or it's not really just about the home in the end. There's a lot of things that go behind that to get that right result. And I think it takes a lot of you've got to be prepared to put the time in and really respect and understand the client.
Yeah, I think like all cliches aside, I think all of that actually like makes it very, very obvious that you actually do care about things, which is I know that those terms are used a lot. I mean, people saying we care, but the doing of things does make that more obvious than just the the talking about it. And I think that's very true with you guys, and it's such a important role. And it's great to have like someone on your team, to see you through it all. I mean, it's great to have that, whatever you do or whatever you're buying or whatever, whoever you're getting you to help you with a service or a product, but especially so with the biggest purchase of your life. It's a big one.
Absolutely. So, and it's a big thing that we talk about within our office is, that service and what we bring to the table for the client. And we have sort of a term within our business of, client for life. And it's not just the time frame of, the transaction that it's important. We make an effort to, and you end up being, become friends with the clients that you work with because of the amount of emotion that goes into it, the amount of time that goes into it, and what you sort of you're going on the journey with them. And yep, you're right. Like a lot of people talk about that, and I'm sure that most people are like that, and I hope they are in terms of their dealings with their clients in various businesses. But we certainly try and live by that, and it's certainly a big part of how I feel you should operate. And I think it shows in for us in the longevity of the business, and the fact that many of our clients are either referred or repeat business, and we're very proud of that. And I think that that's always something you should aspire to within whatever you do. That's ultimately how you conduct yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So, just once again, thanks so much, for sharing
Pleasure.
all that about the business. It's great to have you on. So in sort of saying that too, I'll just ask you, if you wouldn't mind, just to share some details, website. Are there any information that you'd like to share about how people can learn more about the business, about a Property Pursuit, and the best way to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can certainly go to our website at propertypursuit.com.au. That's certainly one way that you can do it. I'm more than happy for people to contact me directly. So my direct email is just nathan@propertypursuit.com.au. Pursuit spelled P-U-R-S-U-I-T. People get that wrong quite often. And my contact number is 0417 590 144, and always more than happy for people to get in contact if they're thinking about buying, or whether it be now or 6 or 12 months down the track or whatever it might be. I'm more than happy to talk to them, even if it turns out there's just a general chat to confirm some things that they've got in their mind, or have some questions answered. If there is some way that we can provide some guidance or some help, I'm more than happy to do that. So I really encourage people that if they are thinking about buying, that even if they do go it alone in the end, I'm still more than happy to talk to them through that and just talk them through any of the concerns or questions that they have, and maybe the ways that we might be able to help if that is the way that that is best for them.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much again. So with that in mind, that's actually it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening into our podcast yet again. Before we go, please leave your feedback as well as any suggestions for topics you would like us to discuss in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Grow Your Business podcast, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Grow Your Business.